Paul Swanson is the president of the Lake States Railway Historical Association in Baraboo. And they have, well, he's going to tell you all about his mission and stuff, but his program tonight is of very local significance to our members because it's featuring the work of one of our former members, the late Harry Evans, who was a member of the Wisconsin chapter for many years. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Paul for your program. See it up there, everybody? Okay, good.
See it on the Zoom because I can see it on your screen. All right, very good. Well, now we've gotten all the technical aspects figured out here. And thank you, Mike, very much for the introduction. Thank you for inviting me here. My name is Paul Swanson. I'm the president of Lake States Railway Historical Association. We're a nonprofit group. We are a membership group. We're located in Baraboo, where we have an archive facility. Our treasurer, Mike Rea, is also here. Mike, do you want to wave to everybody? He is here also, and he's got some brochures to hand out if anybody's interested. And looks like you probably already handed them out. So we ran out. Huh? Okay. Well, if anybody wants to know about our organization more than what I tell you tonight, you can just go to our website, which is www.lsrha.org. And our archive is on lakestatesarchive.org. So you can see our main website, or you can go directly to the archives. And so, as I mentioned, we're a nonprofit group. We've been in existence since 2006. We have a 5,000 square foot facility in Baraboo that was built new in 2015. It is climate controlled, ADA accessible. We have fairly regular hours during the week, but we're entirely volunteer, so we're dependent on volunteers. And Mike, I'm sure you can relate to that since you guys are as well here at the Wisconsin chapter. So inside the building there's about 1,000 square feet. That is the entry area and library, and the rest of the building is a warehouse for archival supplies. Here we have a picture of Bob Ristow, who's our past president and a longtime volunteer there, and he's looking in a lateral file. And here's Bob entering some catalog data on a computer. You can search on our website. There's a link if you go to the database search link on our main website, lsrha.org, and you can search for items in our collection. It includes, we're mostly two-dimensional, so our photo collections are the most popular and the biggest part of it, but we also have a fairly large collection of drawings. We also have a library for research purposes. These are books that have been donated to us, and we are still getting large donations. And here's another one of our volunteers working in the library area. And here is Ray Sommerfeld. He's our resident Fairbanks Morse expert. You can see the cardboard boxes on the left. Those are all drawings that are in, quote, cold storage, unquote, that have not been cataloged yet. And at the back of behind him, you can see a couple bookcases full of maintenance records from Fairbanks Morse. There's one book for each order from the railroads, from what I understand. So if you need to know anything about Fairbanks Morse orders, we're the place to come to. We also have builders' photos of the locomotives, and we also have hand car photos and birth records from the Sheffield Motor Car Company. Here's another view down, looking 90 degrees down the back wall of the warehouse facility. At the end of the hallway here, you see all the black filing cabinets. Those are full of black and white negatives in the Bill Kuba and Lee Haseman collection, and also Bill Reyes steam negatives. And then you see a freezer on the left. That is not a refrigerator for lunch. That is actually a freezer full of film. We have quite a bit of older film that needs to be refrigerated or put in the freezer to protect it. Mostly it's nitrate film and some acetate film that was deteriorating. So we do have cold storage for that. And then we have a large number of flat files where the drawings are stored. And we just recently acquired some more flat files. We're about 65% capacity now. So we have room to grow and are accepting more collections. This is what I call photo row. On the left, you see all the boxes. That's all photography, prints, negatives, slides. The small filing cabinets on the far left there, that's the Bill Rea steam collection that we just recently received from Mike and his son, or his brother, Tony, and we appreciate the donation. We'll be continuing to work on that in the near future. So if you go to our website, lakestatesarchive.org, you'll see all the collections we have. We organize our images, the photographs, that is, of our collection by the donor who donated them. And some of these collections do contain, well, a lot of them contain so-called traders or purchased material or other material that's not original to the person who donated it. And we do have a policy where we are respectful to especially the slide people. If it's a dupe, we won't scan it. If it's a not original work of the person who donated it, we try to reach out to the original person who took the photograph to see if it's okay that we have it in our collections and available to the public. So I'm going to move on with no further ado. We are here tonight to talk about Harry Evans. And I knew Harry for a very short amount of time. He came to us asking if we would be interested in being the long-term home for his photo collection. Harry was born in 1943. He grew up in Winthrop Harbor, Illinois as a kid. And of course, he was close to the Northwestern and the North Shore. They were only half a mile or a mile from his house. So as a kid, he would ride his bike down the tracks and watch the trains go by. Well, eventually, an uncle of his donated or gave him a 35 millimeter Voigtlander camera. Well, this presented a new opportunity for him. He was able to take pictures, and he had an older brother that also had a driver's license. And so that made him more mobile than just his bike down to the trackside at Winthrop Harbor. So at age 14, his first railroad subject was the nickel plate. His first photo he took was a double header. I don't know if this is that double header, but it is probably a similar train. And he was hooked. The train went storming by and steam got him hooked. So he was on a mission. He and his brother, with his brother's help, went out and photographed steam in the last years. This would have been in 1957 was when he took his first picture. And he said it was at Knox, Indiana. So you nickel plate people out there probably know where that is. He told me his quote on that was, he said that it changed his life. And I believe it because of all the photography that he took over the years after that. He traveled with his brother, and like I said, they searched for steam in the Midwest predominantly, but they did go out to Colorado and a few other locations. They went up to the Mesabi, as did a lot of other people at that time, and during the steel strike in 1959, and they also chased the Grand Trunk Western in 1960, and headed out to Colorado for the narrow gauge in 1961. So they're pretty much on the chase for any of the last steam that was still running, and it apparently was a very active chase as steam was, the fires were dropped in steam in the late 50s. His brother soon lost interest when the diesels started coming in, but Harry carried on, and he did document some early diesels, thankfully, because in my opinion, I think early diesels kind of got the short shrift. Seems like it's hard to find photography of first generation diesels early on in their careers before all steam was gone. So I really appreciate the work he did with the diesels. I don't think that he should have thought that it was any lesser important than the steam that he photographed. So Harry photographed the Northwestern, Milwaukee, CB&Q, all the other usual suspects in the Midwest, EJ&E. He also rode and shot the North Shore considerably, since that lasted until 63. He shot Kodachrome and Ektachrome film, and he continued shooting in his college years. He went to college in Fairfield, Iowa from 1961 to 65. And you'll see it here coming up in a little bit. He would get on the train at Fairfield and take it over to Mount Pleasant. And then he would watch the Zephyrs stop at the depot. And so there's a lot of depot photography that he took of the train at Mount Pleasant. We'll be seeing that coming up. So he actually did finally go to work for the Northwestern for about 3 years. He worked downtown in the Northwestern's traffic and marketing department at 400 West Madison Street. He left the company in the late 60s and went on a career of other pursuits other than railroading, but he did still have an interest in railroads. And later on, he did start taking photography again, most importantly in the mid 80s. I know he took some pictures of the 1385 on the Northwestern, so that was steam, it was close to home. and he also shot some more diesels at that time. So eventually, Harry converted to all digital, and he was even shooting up until last year or so. Um, so Harry is just a wonderful fellow. I'm so glad that got to meet him in person and get to know him a little bit. And I also want to tell you folks that Harry's son David and his daughter Christy are also here. And I'd like Christy to come up here and talk for a little bit if she'd like. She'd like to say a few words.
Thank you for that nice introduction. So we're really honored actually to be here and to appreciate my dad again. We think of him every single day, but to know the impact he made on this hobby and something that he pursued all his life is pretty amazing to us. And to know in the last year and a half that we got to know more of all the meaning he had behind it, we're still learning some of that. And just that we miss him every day as our dad, but to know that he made a difference to other people and that his entire collection can be used forever by other people is pretty amazing. So David and I got to take my dad to Lake States 3 times or twice, but then we also went to the banquet in last April, I believe, with him. And those 3 trips were quite meaningful too. So one of our dad had cancer and died from that, but he wanted to accomplish for sure 3 things before he passed away. And one of them was to figure out what he was going to do with his collection of all his photography, all his life. And the other things were to take care of my brother and to take care of my mom. So he got to do all 3 of those things. And we got to be a part of all of that too. But I know after we went to Lake States the first time and we were driving home, he says, I think this is what I need to do with them. And it just was such a reassuring first visit. So we really do thank that. And then to know that we can always go on that website and see his collection. I know it's preserved. And that first tour we had of the place was exactly like those pictures showed. So they take great care of everything and they are all run by volunteers, which is quite amazing. But Paul had asked us just even, I don't know, it was a couple days ago if we could come, and to know that we had this night free was great to just see my dad's things in person again. And we're just very honored. My sister and my mom are on the Zoom, so that's really neat too. So one of the things my sister wanted to mention, and we all say that as our family too, that when we hear the sound of the trains coming, which is every day, that's our dad talking to us. And just kind of his spiritual way of being here. But I know this organization meant a great deal to him, and he's been a member for a really long time. So it's neat to be here too, and to see all of you and know that you carry on this love of the hobby. David and I and Amy were dragged along many times as little kids to see trains, and my mom too. We probably did not appreciate all the things that the trains had for us back then, but it's neat. We're in a lot of pictures, and I think every day we learn a little bit more about our dad, but we're very glad to have that last year and a half where we could have a lot of deep conversations. So thank you so much for having us tonight and to showcase some of his work.
Thank you so much, Christy.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Christy. So glad that you and David could be here tonight. I feel honored to know your family and the few precious hours that I spent with your dad. And when he came to donate the collection at Lake States, I interviewed him for about half an hour. And I think there were times when we were both coming to the tears to our eyes talking about our railroad experiences and stories. And he was an incredible person. And I'm glad that I got to know him that short time. So I will get right to it here. I brought quite a few photos. I told Mike I'll whisk through these fairly quickly, so hopefully you won't get too overwhelmed. But I kind of did this sort of in chronological order, but it is grouped a little bit. This photo actually was taken at Knox, Indiana in 1957. So this very well may be the first time that he saw the nickel plate. So we're going to start out with some nickel plate images. Here's the coal chute at East Fort Wayne, Indiana, also in November of 57. And this is 758 inside the roundhouse with an employee at 103rd Street in Torrance in Chicago. 1958. Harry sometimes would do something a little different than a 3/4 wedge or a roster photo. It looks like he was probably pacing the train from the car and took a shot out the window here. This is 284-745 in action near Valparaiso in May 18th, 1958. Some of these scenes I like seeing the old automobiles and the context around it, signage and whatnot, and it's just fascinating to me. It's like a portal in time to see. This is another freight train approaching. This just says Chicago, Illinois. It's May 18th, 1958. Here's a train at Hammond, Indiana, May 30th, 1958. Uh-oh, I got a direction from Mike and I messed it up. Oh, there we go. Okay. Phew. Okay, and here is a Elko diesel. So Harry made an exception and did shoot one diesel, and I'm glad he did on the nickel plate because photos are kind of rare of these in the early days, and I think they're quite attractive. Wish I would have been around back then to see them. This is at Calumet Yard in Chicago in 1960, so the steam was no doubt gone by then. So we'll move on to another railroad that had steam quite late, and that was the B&O. And he shot the B&O mostly around the Chicago area and a little bit in Indiana. So here we have a locomotive scene at Damon and 14th Street in Chicago in March of 58. This apparently, I think, was an excursion that was run out of Grand Central Station with B&O CT power. I believe this is a 282. There's more photos of this from down below, but somehow Harry got up on the roof of the canopy and made this shot. And I just really enjoy that he caught all the surroundings. You have the REA wagon baggage carts or wagons there on the right. And he had looks like a C&O train in the background with the head-end cars. It looks like they're probably being loaded there at the platform, I'm guessing. This was an interesting shot. He was looking down into the cab. I think this is also at that same time because this was the excursion. It looks like the engineer is either checking his watch. Looks like there's some oil waste in the background that he's got in the cab. I don't know if Harry framed that intentionally, but I just enjoy that. I think it's interesting. It's different. So here we are now. We're moving to the Mesabi. This is in June of 1959 at Proctor. Here they're taking water, and this is on a fan trip because we've got extra flags on the engine. This is 2884-222, and it's taking water at Highland, Minnesota in July of 1960. So while he was up in Mesabi territory, as a lot of other rail fans did at the time, they also made a little trek over to the Duluth and Northeastern, and Harry also made a little visit to Cloquet. The Duluth and Northeastern had steam running quite late, and actually I think it was a little later than the Mesabi, but here we have a view of a 280. I don't know what the number is. It's probably 27 with a caboose, and it looks like a switching scene in the morning on August 1st, 1958. Harry had an eye to capture the aura of the steam locomotive and how it emotes feelings from us when you can just smell the coal smoke and the saturated steam. Here was the shop facility that the Duluth and Northeastern had at Cloquet. They had several tracks going into the building, and there was a locomotive on every track. And also the modelers will probably take note of the scrap debris that's laying around, and you can get an idea for maybe adding to your models. Somehow Harry talked his way into the caboose, and I think maybe for the time somebody could correct me, the D&E did have a mixed service where you could buy a ticket to ride a caboose. I'm not quite certain on that, but somehow he got into the cupola, and this was also in July of 1960. He took a view out looking at the engine as it's running in reverse. Here's number 27, a nice glint shot. And this is it. Saginaw, Minnesota, which was at the other end of the line where they interchanged with the Mesabi, I believe, and this was in November of 1960. Then here's a switching scene with a caboose and the 27 again. Nice low light at Cloquet, also in November of 60. So moving along, we're going to move out west to Rio Grande land. I don't know if Harry rode on one of the fan trips, but he certainly photographed it. He also photographed some of the freight service, most notably on the Farmington branch. But here he is at Alamosa shooting the deadline. 489 today is running on the Cumberson Toltec, of course. You see a pesky diesel in the background, which is of interest to me because you don't see that very much anymore with those engines with pictures that people take today. The 476 was originating in Alamosa, so they were getting it serviced and ready, I believe, for a fan trip. Here they're taking coal. This is all June 12th, 1961. And taking water, and I guess the overflow alarm is ringing there, so the firemen's may be thinking of shutting the valve off, but at least we know it's full. Now we've moved on to Chama, and the 480 is taking water here. I believe these are going to be freight engines going to Farmington. Harry made this shot at Cumbras at the top of the 4% grade. Whoops, bumped the button too quick. I think that's the 489 again, if I'm reading the number on the cab correctly. But it's an interesting shot, low angle. I like the automobiles on the left, and you can see the snow shed on the tail of the Y there in the background. Very nicely composed. And this must have been the train that he was trying to find. I don't know why the caboose is right behind the engine. Maybe a Rio Grande person would know why that train's operating. This is not the Cumberson Toltec. This is the Rio Grande. I've had some people ask me, oh, is that a Cumberson Toltec photo train? No, it is not. This is the real deal. This is at Los Pinos. See the tank in the background, and everybody recognizes this is also on June 13th, 1961. So Harry also photographed the Grand Trunk Western. He photographed the steam when it was actually in revenue service. And then he also came back when they were doing fan trips and got some fan trip shots. So here's 462 number 5634 on a passenger train. This is at Grand Rapids, Michigan in October of 58. And I believe steam had less than a year in revenue service at that point. Here's another shot. That might be the same train. This is near Durand, also October of 58. Here's a shot of a train crossing the Diamond at Durand. The depot was behind us. And you can see the gate that protects the crossing. Quite an interesting scene. Harry complained to me, he said the film was slow and I had to have the shutter speed slow and trains are blurred. And he really thought that was a bad thing, but I kind of find it interesting because it shows motion. It shows the engine is moving. And even though it's blurred a little bit, I think it's great. I really enjoy it. So here is a freight train with 3747 providing the power. This is at dusk near Lennon, Michigan in March of 59. Here's a passenger train also at dusk at Gaines, Minnesota, or Michigan, I'm sorry, Gaines, Michigan, March of 59. And this is also labeled as Gaines, Michigan. It might be the same train. So now we're going to move down to the Detroit here area. The Grand Trunk had an interesting compact maintenance facility at Milwaukee Junction. I always thought that was an interesting name for a place in Detroit. But there was a roundhouse there, a servicing facility, and apparently rail fans were able to get access there because I've seen quite a few photos that were taken here. But on this day, Harry was able to capture a big 484 number 6327. And this is in January of 60. It said on a slide, but I think it might be late 59. Now we're into the fan trip era. This is 6322, obviously on a fan trip, and a diesel is on a freight passing it. And this is near Valparaiso, Indiana in August of 60. Then we close out the Grand Trunk with an engineer greasing the rods and a little child on the left there peering in and watching the activities there. I think just adds so much to the view. Harry did also venture down to the Illinois Central, down to downstate Illinois. So we have a few shots I chose to show you here. This is at Champaign, Illinois on August 23rd, 1958. They were still using steam for switching in the late fifties in Champaign and Centralia and other locations down in the southern part of the state where the supply of coal was still plentiful due to the coal mining. This is a fan trip. The IC engine, I think it's running on the LNN. I'm not certain on that, but this is at Caneyville, Kentucky in October of 1960. This is the same engine on the same fan trip, but now we're at Madisonville, Kentucky. And Harry got a close in shot here, nicely framing the engine, crossing the wood trestle with the trees framing it. Very nicely done. Some of you may recognize this engine. It's a little closer to home here. This was a small little tourist operation. It was called the Peppermint and Northwestern. Has anybody here ever heard of that? Everybody's looking around. Oh, I got one hand up, two hands. Okay. I had to investigate this. I had to Google it to figure it out what it was. This engine is still in existence today. It is now out at Como, Colorado. It's a 262 narrow gauge locomotive, and it operated at this, I think it was like a farm or something, wasn't it, Tom? You remember hearing about it? Okay, well, there's not too much on the internet about it, but apparently it ran there. This was near Waterford, I think, in Wisconsin was where it was located. And it only ran for a year or two. This photo was taken on July 29th, 1962. So here you get a little more view of what they had there. I don't think the water tank is functional. It looks kind of like it's decorative. But
I was there, but
I
too
don't
young
even know
to
if there was a
remember.
loop of track, but it ran here at this farm.
I was too young.
We'll
It
have
was
a few selections of Milwaukee Road. You all know where this location is here. It's 202A on a passenger train in December of 58. And this is another interesting shot. I've not seen a photograph of this before, but this is the roundhouse at South Beloit, Illinois. And Fairbanks Morse engine 717. Looks like it's getting ready to come out and get on the table and start doing its work. In the Beloit area, this is in November of 57. Harry also frequented Browned Out, as I think a lot of fans did back in the day. There was a lot of action there, and it was close to home for him. And looks like somebody's in front of him taking a lower angle shot. Perhaps that's his older brother. This is passenger train passing the depot Round Out. It looks like it's probably the commuter train heading up to Fox Lake, and this is in January of 60. He is crossing. Is he crossing over? I think he is. Yep. So yeah. I always enjoy these old automobiles that are used as high rail vehicles. So I threw a few of these in here too. And apparently Harry did as well. This is a Pontiac the Milwaukee used. This is at Sturtevant in February of 60. Here's a Fairbanks Morse engine working in the Sturtevant area, 1960. Here he also ventured into the operator's bay in the depot interior at Sturtevant. And this is in February of 1960. Looks like there's a control panel there. I don't know if they controlled the CTC, if it was probably just the plant, I'm guessing. So it was probably there was a small stretch of CTC. Okay, very good. So then there was an operator there that worked under direction of the dispatcher. Okay. Harry also got inside the tower at Burlington, and I don't have the fellow's name here, but if it's on our archives, I'm sorry, I don't have the fellow's name, but Harry did record his name, and this fellow was the operator that day at the tower. So this was the crossing of the Sioux line into Milwaukee at Burlington, and this was in January of 61. A one-car scoop coming down off of the Fox Lake sub. Hard to believe today that Milwaukee was running scoots with only one car, but that's what they did back then. This is in 1962. Whoops. Oh, too fast. Okay. Then Harry did catch Fairbanks Morse hood unit or road unit, and this is a freight train. Location is unknown, but I am thinking that might be Round Out. If anybody recognizes this location, please chime in. I see a dwarf pot signal to the right of the locomotive, and there's some buildings to the right. Looks like there's maybe a caboose car body not on the rails. And given the code line there on the left, I would say that's probably Round Out or maybe Sturtevant. think there's too many trees for it to be sturdy. We'll move on to the Sioux line. Harry did capture a little steam there. There was a fan trip that he followed, but he also captured some of the Sioux line's interesting Alco action in the diesel world. This is at Stevens Point. In 1959, this is on the Y at Ladysmith in May of 59. Sioux line really liked to bracket those PAs with a EMD Jeep in the middle. And I see that was common for a while. So perhaps a Sioux line person would be able to explain what the operational advantages were to that. Here's the fan trip that Harry did photograph. This is at Ladysmith, June 21st, 1959, 2719, which I believe is the engine that today is up at Duluth. I just love this photo. I think Harry he knew he was on a mission. He was going to sit there and wait until the Northwestern came over the bridge there, or the decapod that's on display at Ashland, I believe. Yes, Ashland. And this was in June of 1960. So the Northwestern diesel is, correct me if I'm wrong, is this the lead to the Ordoc, perhaps? Okay, I think somebody said yes. So that's what's going on here. Yep.
So that the photo was round out, shoving around the Y into the squadron, back into the EJ and E5.
Okay.
Compass west of the inner.
Compass west of the interlocking. So we're looking south by compass west. Okay. I might have to contact you for further information on that. Okay, great. Terrific. All right, here is the outside of the interlocking tower at Burlington with the Sioux line train going by. And this is in January of 61. So that would have been the same trip when he photographed the operator working inside. Here's another Ordoc lead. This is at Marquette, of course, on the DSSNA or Sioux line. And this is in on July 25th, 1961. Here he worked his way inside the roundhouse at Marquette on that same day, July 25th, 61. And it was South Shore Baldwin's there to photograph. Now we're going to move on to Harry's college years, 61 to 65, when he would get over to Mount Pleasant and just check the action there during the day at the depot. So I'm pretty sure this is the Zephyr coming in westbound. Nebraska, yes, this is Nebraska Zephyr. I should look at my notes. And this is on January 25th, 1963. There is the hind end of it. And then on along comes a freight. They had a lot of Jeep 30s and Jeep 20s running at the time he was shooting this stuff in the early 60s. You'll notice the color is a little off on this. Some of these are ectochromes that had turned quite pink. And so we tried to adjust the color best we could in Photoshop. So some of them may not look perfect, but that's most likely the reason is because it's ectochrome film. We've done the best we can to try and balance the colors so it looks somewhat natural. Here we are at Clyde in Cicero, and this is the diesel shop with a bunch of somewhat freshly new Chinese red EMD units. And now we are seeing the Kansas City Zephyr at the passenger station at West Quincy, Missouri on July 13th, 1963. Now we're back in Mount Pleasant. This is caboose on the hind end of a freight train on December 11th, 1962. Now we're on, looking at the turntable East St. Louis, July 16th, 1963. Burlington had the unique truss turntables, and I always screamed Burlington when you saw a turntable with that design. Here's a freight train crossing the bridge at Oregon, Illinois in May of 1960. Harry once in a while would catch a little something different on film here. Here was a section crew passing by at Mount Pleasant on a speeder with a wigwag in the background. Loading mail in the RPO car on the Nebraska Zephyr at Mount Pleasant, June 16th, 1961. And the passengers boarding. And Harry stepped inside the depot and documented the waiting room inside. Two freight trains passing. An EMD Jeep 20, I believe that is, with a nice widescreen front glass, passing a wooden caboose. What a classic scene. Again, we have the Nebraska Zephyr coming into Mount Pleasant. Here it is on a little colder day. Noted that this was 18 degrees below zero. Now, I don't know if that was the actual temperature or the wind chill, but leave that to your imagination. This is on January 23rd, 1963. It certainly is chilly because there's a lot of steam there. So Harry and his buddies, he had several rail fan buddies. This is when he was about 17 years old, so it would have been very early 60s. They ventured over to Elgin, I believe it was, and rode on the short line railroad that was there. It was the Aurora, Elgin, and I say AE and FR. So I guess we're gonna have to read. Elgin, Aurora, Elgin, and Fox River. There we go. They had this little center cab. This was a remnant of the electric interurban line, and they had one power plant they had to deliver cars of coal to. So they used this little GE. Whoop, sorry, bumped the button too fast. Yeah, a little, I don't think we're saying Pepsi, please. I think we're saying move the truck, please. So there's a brief delay here. Obviously, this is a street running electric interurban or streetcar line that they operate on. I believe this engine still exists. And the Fox Valley, what's the name of the Fox River Valley? Thank you. Tourist operation runs on part of this track today, and I believe they still have that locomotive. Now we're going to move on to a little bigger railroads. Here's a few Santa Fe shots. This is War Bonnet F unit on freight train at Fort Madison on January 20th, 1962. And we've got a very interesting scare stripe paint job on Fairbanks Morse engine switching at Dearborn. And this is in 1961, August 29th. Harry also ventured down to Springfield, Illinois, and shot a few shots of the Chicago and Illinois Midland. Here's one of their EMD hood units in the engine house. This is March of 61. He also shot a little bit of the Rock Island. Here's the interlocking tower in Washington Heights, Illinois, where the Rock Island crossed the Pennsy, according to the lettering on the tower. This is in June of 1960. And the wonderful Aero train in Joliet, and this is July of 1960. That was number 2, which is at Green Bay. Here's number 1, also at Joliet. Here's another shot at Joliet of Alco RS on a commuter train. This is July 26, 1962. Now we're back at Dearborn. Here's Chicago and Western Indiana Alco switching. Oh, I think that's the CWI's train because it's still old coaches. This is a great shot. Harry really lucked out on this. What I'm told, this was on the Mesabi, but these Great Northern F units were on lease or loan to the Mesabi for 2 weeks for testing, or maybe perhaps the Great Northern wanted to see how they would do moving ore, but they were only on the Mesabi for 2 weeks. And Harry just happened to be there at the right place in the right time, and it's a great shot. This was taken in June of 59, and it says at Saginaw, Michigan, or Minnesota. I'm sorry, Saginaw, Minnesota. The other Saginaw. Well, now we're back in Colorado land. He did shoot some diesels there, fortunately, I think. This is at Alamosa in the yard, June 12, 1961. And Harry also shot some of the EJ&E since that was close to home. We're at Waukegan, Illinois. Lots of shots of the center cabs in service. This is switching the interchange at Roundout, May of 1960. Here we got a little meat action going on. The Northwestern switch engine is pulling alongside the EJ&E. Looks like they got an EJ&E boxcar coupled up to the engine. And it's the rear of an EJ&E train, judging from the caboose. Harry's buddies decided to partner with him. They were going to do something with this caboose. He related the story to me. He thought perhaps foolishly, some of you that know him better probably know the story behind this better than I do, but EJ&E was getting rid of these cabooses, and so they were going to buy one and fix it up and move it somewhere. And I, for the life of me, I can't remember what the story was. I've got it written down, but I apologize that I don't have the story. But here they've got grand plans to restore this caboose, and I believe they did get it moved. I think the caboose is still in existence today, but I'm not sure where it's at. I always thought this photo was funny. I thought, boy, all I could think of is slack action. What's that going to do to that load there? But Harry must have thought the same thing because he thought it was prudent to take a picture of this at Waukegan, Illinois in 1961. Here's another EJ&E shot, also in Waukegan, 1962. Threw in one Green Bay Western shot here for you GBW fans. This is on the turntable at Green Bay in July of 61. Now we're back in Joliet, seeing a little GM&O action. This is a 100 and 100A on passenger train Abraham Lincoln. And this is on July 26, 1962. Here's some more GM&O F units on a freight train at Lincoln, Illinois, 1960. Elko 1123 at the shops at Bloomington, Illinois, October of 59. And we have one IC shot here. 4001 was one of the oldest E units they had, one of the shovel noses. So it made quite a sight. And this is on passenger train City of Miami at Carbondale in March of 59. Harry shot a little bit of traction and by osmosis, a few diesel shots of the Illinois terminal after they were dieselized. So here we are at Springfield, Illinois in March of 1961, the EMD 777 doing some switching. He did venture down to St. Louis and shot some streetcar action and also passed by the deadline. These cars were sitting there for quite a while, from what I understand, before they were scrapped. He took this photo in 1964. Now we're back up in Marquette area. This is the Allison I's ore dock. We're looking away from the dock, I believe, because if we turn around and look the other way, this is what we see. This is in 1961. Harry also visited the Railroad Museum at Kirkwood, Missouri, and caught a few Missouri Pacific trains passing by. Here's a freight train and a passenger train. And this is passenger train 15. I don't know if it's named or not, but this is in 1963 on July 14th. Also in the St. Louis area, of course, you have to make a stop at Union Station to check out the action there. Here we have a New York Central lash up of E-units on the head end of a passenger train. And this is the Southwesterner departing Union Station on January 1st, 1962. Here you must have went out east a couple times. There's not too many, but here's one that's noteworthy. This is on the Susquehanna. It's an Elko diesel switcher. I believe it's a commuter train because it's only got two cars and people are milling about here at the depot waiting to board it. And this is at Hawthorne, New Jersey on June 9th, 1964. Now we're back in our part of the country here. Here we shot a few TMERT shots. This was after TMERL had shut down and a couple freight locomotives were kept, and I think one streetcar, and they were used by the power company to move cars to the power plant. So the first shot there was in October of 60, and this also was in October of 60. So the interchange, this is apparently at the Milwaukee Road interchange on the south side of Chicago or Milwaukee. And a few Wabash shots. This is at Union Station at St. Louis, March of 61. See the TRRA is on the left switching. And an interesting Fairbanks Morse on Wabash at Decatur, Illinois, July 17th, 1963. So, so far you've seen kind of a potpourri, of selection of stuff. We're going to close out the program with, two of the railroads that were closest geographically to him, but I think that they were his favorites, and that is the North Shore and the Northwestern. So Harry was able to, like I said, early on in his mid-teens, he was able to ride his bike down to the station at Winthrop Harbor on the Northwestern, and then a nearby station on the North Shore. And so he's shot quite a bit of it in the neighborhood, and he was able to get out there in all sorts of weather and situations. And this is an interesting shot of the line car that's working at Winthrop Harbor in December of 58. And if you look at the power lines and the vegetation, everything is coated in ice. So it must have just been miserably cold and windy this day, but he was out there shooting it. And I don't know who that is in the foreground. That might be his older brother. This is at Milwaukee, of course, at the station. December of 58. Here we have a silver liner leading a passenger train going by the Tobin Road shelter near Kenosha in December of 58. Here he did a view from below here. I think he's looking up between the bridges crossing over something else here. This is at Beach Park, Illinois in July of 59. Now we're at Beach Park. Harry also shot the pups and freight locomotives and switching operations besides the passenger trains. And I featured a little more of the unusual stuff here tonight for you. Here's the pups tied up at North Chicago in December of 59. And here we have a box. I don't know. I'm not an electric train expert. I would call it a box cab, but it's one of the big freight locomotives they had. Number 458 is in action on a freight train at Zion, Illinois, and this is January of 60. Here's a little closer view of the 458 while they're switching at the south end of Pettibone Yard at North Chicago, again in January of 60. Here we have a view of passengers milling about at the platform. This is at Zion in January of 60. So the North Shore still had 3 more years to go. Everything was quite normal at that point. Here's another speeder with track guys. This time it's on the North Shore at Zion, Illinois. Here we have a silver liner moving along at a pretty good rate of speed. And his note on the slide was that the silver liner is substituting for the electro liner. So this is the through express train. And the train on the right is waiting to cross over. And this is at Zion, Illinois in June of 60. Here's the interlocking tower at Racine, Wisconsin in September of 1960 with 459 with a handful of cars. Now we're back in Milwaukee at the depot, of course. It was explained to me that when the trains were tied up there, that the mechanical forces would often change the shoes on the poles because of wear and tear. So I believe that's what's going on here, is they're changing the shoes on the trolley poles. This is the lower yard taken from the platform up above. Harry got inside the shops at Harrison Street in Milwaukee and was able to photograph cars 415, 751, and 752. And this is in February of 1961. Another familiar scene with the electroliner coming into the station. So we're looking southwest, I believe. And I just enjoy as much of the train, I enjoy even more the automobiles and the billboards and all the surroundings. It just really gives you an eye into what it must have been like back in the day. Everything is dirty and dingy and it does not look like a movie. This is the real deal. And I do remember Deep Rock gas stations, but probably not the price it was back then. Now we're back out in the country here. Here's 459 with a freight train at the crossover switch at Winthrop Harbor, February of 61. Here the freight train is passing underneath the EJ&E, North Chicago, in about 1962. The line car is working in Milwaukee on 6th Street, so it's in the street running area south of downtown. I just thought that'd be rather unusual if you were driving down the street and here's this thing sitting in the middle of the road with a guy standing up on top, but I imagine the locals probably were used to that at the time. This is a picturesque little spot. I really like this spot on the railroad. This is at Lake Bluff, Illinois, and on April 3rd, 1961, and it's a local car getting ready to make its run. I believe that's the Northwestern that crosses over the North Shore there at that location. And here's Pup 455 with a freight train passing the depot at Lake Bluff. And this is April 4th, 1961. Now we're back inside the shops, but this time we're at Highwood, Illinois at the headquarters. And we can see car 172 there in the foreground, and there's 2 other green cars in the background. Looks like they're jacked up and getting truck work done. And this is in April of 61. And we've got another track crew out and about. This is at Zion, Illinois. This is a railfan trip on the left, obviously, waiting in the hole, and everybody is waving at the regular train passing by. And this is at Zion, Illinois, in June 17th, 1962. Here we have a night shot. Harry did dabble in night photography a little bit. He had a tripod, so he would set it up and take his shots, and he was fairly proficient at it. You know, back in the day before digital cameras, you had to calculate your exposures a little differently, and you couldn't always review them until you got the film back from the processors. So you didn't know if you were successful until maybe several days or a week later. But he was successful, and here is a shot. Let's see, this is 7:51, and this is at Waukegan on December 24th, 1962. So Harry did also shoot a little bit of the North Shore after the end. I'll spare you the sad side of it, except for this one shot. Here is the abandoned tracks right away at Roundout. And this was well, it said December 63, but I think it was a little later after that. They probably didn't take the rail out that quick. Well, maybe they did because they stopped running in January. So that's it for the North Shore. Now we're going to move on to the Northwestern. And this was Harry's baby. He loved the Northwestern, and he was there at a very interesting period in time, in my opinion. Steam was gone, so Harry was probably bummed about that. But however, he was able to catch SDs and Jeeps in commuter service with heavyweight equipment and a sprinkling in the bi-levels. And then he got to witness the changeover to what we know today, the bi-levels in service. Well, the ones that are running today are newer than the ones that he saw, but you'll see a slow progression. This is a through train here. This is not a scoot, but this one is the Peninsula 400 at Winthrop Harbor. This is in January of 58. Now, occasionally you'll see a mix of a bi-level in with the heavyweights. I call them heavyweights, but I guess it's not really a heavyweight car, but it is a commuter car that's a traditional steel car, not a bi-level, single level car. The Northwestern ordered these SDs specifically for commuter service. They were steam boiler equipped. You can see it's got the steam boiler stack on the short nose there. And a lot of them had the Mars light on the front as well. I think the wigwag is wigging and wagging. He just caught it with it's in the down position here in this shot. This is also at Winthrop Harbor. And on the far left, you can see the mail crane. I don't know how much use that got at that time, probably not much. This is also in 1958. Here's 1711 on the commuter train. I don't have a location on this. I suspect this might be Waukegan. These Jeeps had like I said, they had the steam heat generator in it. So on the long hood end, I believe that was for the water tank. Correct me if I'm wrong. Here's a great view of Harvard. I just love this view. Harry climbed up either on the top of a caboose or on the water tank and shot this view looking down towards the depot, which is not there anymore. There's the new depot is there today. But it's just a lovely scene with a Jeep and the heavyweight train coming in. This is in January of 59. This is also at Harvard. But now we are looking north, I believe, and the track curving off to the left goes towards Capron, and on the right is the track going off to Janesville. Well, we're back at Winthrop Harbor here with another mishmash of commuter equipment. And the wigwag again is in the standard position there. Not sure what's going on. Okay. I think this is a great shot because I'm pretty sure that that's Harry's bicycle. Christy, maybe you can confirm that. Maybe she says that's correct. Okay. All right. So Harry he parked his commuter bicycle there by the depot and hiked 100 feet down the tracks and got this great shot of the commuter train passing through Winthrop Harbor. Also at the same location, but a freight train. Or is no, wait, I'm sorry. Those are express box cars on the head end, aren't they? Let's see, that is passenger train 154. Okay, May 1959. Another commuter train. Obviously not air conditioned, as it looks like there's a lot of windows open on the coaches. We're back at Harvard. Great display of Stagecoach yellow for all the eyes to see. Okay, now we are at Waukegan, Illinois in November of 59. Harry spent quite a bit of time at Waukegan. He shot a lot of the commuter scenes. There's a lot more online on our website. You're just seeing a little tip of the iceberg here. And occasionally he caught some freight action as well. Here's a freight train with F unit 4101. This is also 1959. Here's a intercity passenger train at speed. You can see the station sign on the right. So that confirms it's Winthrop Harbor. We don't have an identification on the passenger train. I've passed this on to many people when we tried to figure out what it is, but it's probably one of the 400s. Here we have a freight train with two Jeeps, 1571 and the 1671. And here's the back end of it. This is at Russell, Illinois, which was right on the state line. Now we're at Butler. Switch engine is getting serviced. Looks like he's taking sand. Don't think the coal part of the tower is in use anymore at this date. This is in December of 59. Here's some freight train action at Zion, Illinois at the depot in June of 60. A commuter train with an E unit on it and fresh paint. This is a 5012B, and this is also Winthrop Harbor, July of 1960. Here's an interesting shot at Waukegan. He's taking it from the yard office building, looking down from above. It was a multi-story structure right next to the tracks, but I think it's just an interesting view. There's a few bi-levels in the background, but the old so-called heavyweight equipment is still quite predominant. This is a switch job that's working at Beach Park, Illinois in September of 1960. I don't know what conference is going on here, but they were having some sort of discussion. And then they started to pull reverse as the engine is facing and continued to pull down an industry track to do some switching. Here we have 1657 on a commuter train at Zion, September of 1960. Now the bi-levels are starting to take over for the heavyweight equipment, so we start to see them dominate the yards. Here's two commuter trains tied up in the yard at Kenosha in November of 1960. Again, bi-levels are becoming more common, but there are still Jeeps and SDs for power. Here's a freight train at Harvard. This is a great shot. Train is eastbound. Nelson Brothers, can you tell us what train that is? 472, they say. January of 1961. Harry also captured the local switching on the line. I call it the Capron line, but it was the line that came from Belvedere over to Harvard. It was kind of a secondary freight line. Nelson Brothers, again, correct me if I'm wrong. But this is a small train that Harry followed on a wintry day. And I think they're either getting orders or instructions or something there. The train order board doesn't say for them to stop. So perhaps they're having a conference with the operator. And then here they motor by. And I just love the consist on this freight train. 2 M and St. L boxcars and 1 Northwestern boxcar. And there's Cape Run. We're at the depot. Great view, the boxcars on the siding for grain loading and the elevator, and the whole scene is just great. This is the same train again because it's the 2 M and St. L boxcars. Now we have a commuter train. We're back at Zion in March of 61. Now we've got all bi-levels. The heavyweight cars are gone. Oh, we got to have a shot of Ramblers on auto racks. So here you go. These are on a freight train at Zion, May 10th, 1961. White must have been the predominant color at the time. Looks like there's some station wagons. This is Dan's, a little selection there. Here's a lineup of Fairbanks horsepower tied up at I lost my place here. Sorry about this. I believe this is at well, I'll find my way. I think this is at what is this Escanaba? Yes, this is at Escanaba. Okay, so we're up in Michigan now. This is a Fairbanks horsepower that's tied up. Now we are back in Waukegan, January 6, 1962. Now we have an F unit on the freight train. It has replaced the SDs and the Jeeps. Now we've gone forward in time. Harry came back to the Upper Peninsula and he started shooting again in the late 70s and early 80s for a short time on film. And so I've selected a few here just to give you a little variety and retrospective. He went up there and shot the Alcos, of course, like everybody else was doing at the time. This shot here is at the last shot was at Escanaba. This shot here is at Ishpeming. And this is on December 4th, 1980. The engine house building on the left is still there. It is now the CN. Now we're back at Butler. Looks a little different from when that Alco was taking sand at the tower. This is in June of 1982. Well, we're gonna go back in time a little bit. We're back up at Escanaba. We've got a little potpourri here at the end. Harry photographed these E-units. This is probably the last Northwestern steam power he photographed until the 1385 was on the scene in the 80s. But these E4s were used for stationary power at Escanaba to thaw ore pellets. I believe that's what they were used for. I have a little oopsie here with the maintenance away department. Apparently the ballast regulator decided to go for a little detour there. If you look at the pavement, and the locals seem to be very interested in what's going on here. Luckily, Harry was there to document this. Must have been the talk of the town. The police are there too, apparently to direct traffic. This is the little house track at Winthrop Harbor. They're transloading ballast from ballast cars into a truck. And I assume it must be for a crossing project nearby. And I love the Rambler in the foreground too. So that just screams southern Wisconsin, northern Illinois. Harry also documented a few other things here. Here's a derailment scene at Russell, Illinois. This is right on the state line in July of 58. And the Northwestern still had a wrecker that was steam powered. And this is one of them. You'll see another one here in another shot. There's the other one. This is a different wreck here. This is at Zion in February of 58. So there were 2 wrecks in 58 that he documented. Modelers take note. Now we're back at Russell. He took quite a number of series of photos at derailment. And also, of course, the boss had to show up in the high rail truck, and classic Northwestern, cheap and nothing wasted, had to reuse a crossing bell gong there for the bell on the front of the car. So I think that is an absolute classic. So great that Harry thought that was worthy of taking a picture, and now we can enjoy it many years later. And here's a Chevy. No bell. Whoops. Sorry, I bumped the button too quick. Here's a Chevy, 1962, I think that is. Love the red light on the top there. I guess the boss had to let everybody know he was coming. Harry did get up to Elroy. Here's a couple shots. This is the Rochester 400. And this is on June 24th, 1962. Nelson Brothers, when did that train last run? 1963, I believe it was July of 63. Okay. So the train had about another year to go. Twin Cities 400 and the Dakota 400 came off on the same day, they said, if our Zoom readers can't hear them. Here's another shot at Elroy. The building still stands today. It is used by the local fire department, believe it or not. And this was a local freight. Looks like they stopped to line a switch, and they are leaving town. This is now a bike path, so you can ride your bike by there and imagine this scene today. Well, Harry also took a few pictures of his son David, and here is little David at an open house for 1385. I believe this is at Butler. David, you were such a cute little kid there back in the day. It looks like you were even braving the rain to see the steam engine. So I want to thank everybody for putting up with my dry commentary here, but I think Harry's photographs speak for themselves. If you want to look at more of them, we've got several thousand of them online, and you can click through them at your leisure on our website. And we thank you for viewing them. I've got just a few here to close things out. We're back at Union Station and back at Milwaukee on the TMERT, not the L. Round out with the Fairbanks Morse. Crossing over to head to Fox Lake and the good old North Shore. Great shot. And we close it out with this great sunset shot, Grand Trunk Western fan trip. And Harry, we know you're upstairs looking down on us, and we really appreciate you sharing all these images with us, and for your friendship and your memories, and we're all better for it. So thank you, Harry, very much.
Can you unshare your screen? Paul Swanson, everybody. Anybody here in the room have any questions? If you do, I would say come on up to the front here and talk into the microphone. Anybody? Not hearing anybody. Anybody in the Zoom have any questions?
Yeah, Mike, I've got a comment for Paul and for you. I received my newsletter last week, and on the back page, the bigger picture was that shot at South Beloit at the Roundhouse on the Southwestern. My chin hit the table when I saw that. And so I investigated their site, and more of the stuff I looked at that day, I became a sustaining member of the organization. Is that good?
Thank you very much, Jerry. Thank you very much, Jerry, for joining.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Jerry. Anybody else?
I have one comment. Great show.
Okay.
Mike, it was a great show. Thank you very much for organizing it, and good luck in your retirement.
Thanks, Ed. Great. Anybody else with anything for Paul?
Yes, coming from out of town, compared to you guys, I really enjoyed it. It was great. All this hodgepodge of stuff. I love it. Felt like I was on a short vacation. Thanks.
Thank you, Fred. Appreciate it. And with that, I think we're going to close. Remember, we're going to have an online Gab Fest for our members next week, 1 week from tonight. We will send out an email to our members about that. Hope you can make it. And then on the 21st, a Tuesday, we're going to have an online slideshow, and we'll send out information about that as well. And then next March 3rd, 1 month from tonight, Richard Koenig is going to be doing his program on Midwest Railroads on the eve of Staggers in the 1970s. Fantastic photography. So we hope you're with us for all those. Once again, if you are not a member, what's stopping you? Just go to our website, www.nrhswis.org, and become one of the supporters that makes programs like this possible. Thanks very much. I've had pleasure being your president, and I'm going to adjourn for tonight. Good night, everybody. Good night.